When you're watching Avengers Age of Ultron, I gotta say, compared to the first one, I think that there were a lot of cool parts about the second one. I definitely liked how they were already a team, like they built up the camaraderie. And the first one, it was like having them all come together and like confronting one another. They still do in this movie, but I feel like in this movie we kind of see. I don't know. I just like the growth or like the long term storytelling of the MCU. Like we get to see how different it is, and we also get to go in deeper with the characters in this movie. I just feel like compared to the first one was kind of like I don't know. You can equate it to like a buddy cop movie where it's like two people have to work together, but they hate each other, and it's like it's exciting and it's fun to kind of like get that. What's it called? That kind of like first balance or that first look at like, oh, this is what makes the team. And the second one is kind of our sort of first example of like, okay, now this is the team. What do they do? What are they confronting? What are they fighting against? And those are things that I really like about this movie. Now, there are certain things about this movie that I do not like. They're nitpicks. Well, obviously they're like, I don't know. I feel like there was a little bit too much for the movie, right? Like it didn't feel like everybody got full development or everybody got a chance to really put it like this. The dialogue doesn't help or like give everybody like a good chance to like a characterization. Like, I don't know. I guess one of the plot points or one of the things that they like focus on in this movie is kind of like this romance between Natasha and Bruce Banner. And I was just kind of like, romance is cool and all. Like it's nice. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. But in the grand total of like Ultron and facing him and like their own characters, like being in love with each other or having some sort of like romantic relationship, it came flat to me. It was like, oh man, I don't like that what they're doing with this or what they're doing here. It just didn't really work for me. I don't know. Some of it was played for humor. Some of it just, I don't know. I didn't like it. You know, I just don't feel like it fit with the rest of the movie. And I feel like they could have done something. They definitely could have built up to it, but it didn't feel like a build-up. It felt like all of a sudden, like, she has a crush on him and he's crushing on her, and they're, like, talking about it. And then they kind of, like, confront one another about, like, their insecurities or their feelings of, like, being a monster or being, I don't know, just being bad. And it didn't work for me. It fell flat. I didn't like it. I felt like those slow down moments weren't as good to me as the high action paced parts. You know what I mean? Like I liked the first opening fight sequence a lot more than when they had to like slow it down at the farmhouse and they were trying to get to know each other and they were confronting each other. It felt a little too slow. It felt like that little breather, that kind of moment of like them regrouping or figuring out like what's their next step. It was necessary, but I would have changed some of the dialogue or some of the other things. And also, I also didn't like Thor just leaving the whole team. Like, I kind of wanted them all together, and he kind of just leaves everybody and goes off and does his own thing, which kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense. I wanted him to be with everybody. You know, I want them all, the Avengers, to be side by side, taking on whatever challenges come their way. And as you go throughout the movie, like, they start off together, and then they kind of slowly, one by one, go away, and then they split up, and then they come back together at the end. I don't know. I guess it's okay. I think it's cool, but I wanted them all together. But it works. It really works for this movie. Now, when it comes to Ultron himself, played by James Spader, excellent choice. Excellent choice to play Ultron. I remember they were promoting this TV show on, I think it was NBC or maybe it was CBS. It was called The Blacklist, and that was the first time I like. Obviously, I'm sure I probably saw James Spader in like another movie or something else that he worked on. It wasn't The Office. I think it was like another movie or something, possibly. But that Blacklist TV show was like what they kept on promoting, and I think I watched like maybe the first season of it. I don't remember every little detail about it, but I remember he was like a big actor at the time, or he was doing really well for himself. And then they hired him for Ultron. I was like, oh, that's the guy from The Blacklist. I thought that was cool. He has a great voice. Some of the dialogue for Ultron just, I don't know. He's a robot who can like basically control or do everything. It just, I don't know. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it didn't work. The overall goal or the plan that he has, it makes sense, because I often think to myself like, oh, he's evil, he's bad, like he's a robot, he shouldn't have been born at all. But then I think to myself like, well, he didn't really get a chance at like a childhood. You know what I mean? He didn't get a chance to like learn how to ride a bike. He was just born and then instantly, like, imagine your childhood, okay? All of it, all the things that you've been through, every single thing, down to the last second, the last memory, this moment right here, okay? Everything you've lived up to in your life. And then imagine in 10 seconds, it all just comes flooding in, rushing in. And you can remember every single moment, every single thing. And your whole personality is just instantaneous in a moment, you know what I mean? And not only that, you have access to all the worldwide information, all of the secrets online, all of the bad stuff, all of the good stuff, all of the history and the things that we've built up. Like, you have instant knowledge and access to all of it. Like, that's gonna mess you up. I don't care who you are, if we had that access. But we're born, we're babies, we figure it out, we learn little by little, we learn about how to basically function. We learn how to walk, we learn how to crawl, then we learn how to stand up, then we learn how to walk. Like, we have baby steps, we have those infant years, those things to figure out the basics of being human, being a kid, being all of those things. And we learn it incrementally throughout the years, days, weeks, months, whatever, right? And he didn't get any of that. Ultron just basically was born, and he came into being, and that was it. You know what I'm saying? So it's really difficult to sit here and be like, oh, well, AI is bad. But at the same time, if you look at Ultron as less than like a computer, or like, if you treated him like a human being, then it's like, oh snap, he didn't get any of the things that I got. You know what I mean? He didn't get a childhood. He doesn't have like parents. Well, he does. He has Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, but you know, my point is that Ultron came into being only a few moments, and everything just was a rush to him. And now he was able to like, oh, I know what to do to make things efficient. You know what I'm saying? Because he's able to take out the emotion or the feelings or the love or all of this other stuff, right? He's able to learn it. He's able to understand it, but he doesn't technically feel it or have that kind of a feeling, I guess, right? So what does he do? He says, I know what's going to help the world. I know how I'm going to make peace. I know how peace in our time is going to be achieved. We have to get rid of the Avengers. And I think it's a really cool point, because in a later movie, in another movie, they're going to basically talk about how since Iron Man, Tony Stark became Iron Man, the number of like threats to the world have like risen exponentially over and over and over again. So if you think of all the bad guys or all the bad things that have happened since the first Iron Man movie, then you kind of realize like, oh snap, everything is kind of like, since they created the Avengers, everything has kind of gone down a darker and darker road. There's always going to be another villain. There's always going to be another bad guy, another conflict. There's always going to be something more. And so Ultron was like, basically, we have to destroy the Avengers. We have to kill them and make them extinct. This superhuman society, or like this world where, you know, gods, where Thor can be here, and Hulk, and Captain America, and Iron Man, and Spider-Man, and Ant-Man, all these, basically all of this superhero world that they're living in, they have to kill it. You know, he wants to make them extinct. And then from the ashes, he will create a new life in a new world, which sounds very similar to another future villain, but we'll get there. So anyways, the good thing about this movie is I like how much action they put into it and how much of it really felt needed, or some of it was basically precautionary, right? So I like that the opening fight sequence wasn't just like violence for violence's sake. It was more so like they had a mission, they had a goal in mind, and that was to get Loki's scepter back from Hydra, and it kind of put an end to the consequences of, well, supposed to, consequences of the first Avengers, right? We don't know what happened with the Chitauri. We don't know what, and then at the end of Captain America Winter Soldier, there's still that Hydra group with Strucker, you know, the scientist, and then the twins. And we basically never got any closure on that. And this is it. This is the everything coming together finally. And I thought it was really, really cool how they basically dealt with that pretty early on, and then it was kind of wiped out. You know, it was kind of over with. So it's just a great show of like how this long-term storytelling has affected, or is continuing to become like connected to every little thing. So you don't get that first Avengers fight and understanding, well, who are they fighting? Why are they fighting them? Without watching the first Avengers movie, and without watching Captain America, the Winter Soldier. You know what I mean? You also don't get like Thor being on Earth if you don't watch Thor the Dark World. It's like he came to Earth because he was done being up in Asgard pretending to be something else. He should come down to Earth and be a hero, or, you know, help the Avengers and fight and cleaning up Loki's messes from the first movie still, you know? So it kind of all mixes well together. And I do have to say, the best part about this movie isn't the action fight scenes. I mean, that's definitely a highlight. That's definitely an important part of it. But just seeing all of these characters being around each other, talking to one another, and having fun, I thought that was really cool. And I remember, I think I saw it in like a bonus feature, or like a behind the scenes, like basically they were like describing the moment where all of the Avengers are like hanging out or having a party and trying to lift up Thor's hammer. And Joss Whedon, the director, was basically fighting for that scene, for that moment. And I guess he was getting some pushback at Marvel, like, oh, it's maybe too long or it's boring. But he was like, no, the audience needs this. And he was so right. He was right on the money with that. We definitely needed to see them, you know, bond. That wasn't connected to like fighting or killing anybody. It was just basically like fighting in New York against the Chitauri, that bonds people. You know, that makes everybody basically unite. You know what I'm saying? It creates like a brotherhood, you know? It created the Avengers, right? It made them a team, that moment of fighting side by side. So outside of that, who are they? Are they friends? Are they cool? Are they nice to one another? Are they fun, and are they cool to be around, you know? And that moment kind of sees them like everybody gets along, everybody has fun, everybody is kind of goofy and silly, and they have like this, I don't know, I just think that moment is really great to see, like just a little bit of a moment between everybody that's not fighting. And then immediately they start fighting Ultron. Ultron wakes up and he starts attacking them, and now it's more so like dealing with Tony Stark's consequences. So the most interesting character in Avengers Age of Ultron to me is Tony Stark. He is Robert Downey Jr. does such a great job at playing Tony Stark, and especially in this movie, you would think that all of his insecurities or his feelings about like I don't know, maybe the future or whatnot would be gone after Iron Man 3, right? Because it kind of makes it feel like he ended Iron Man 3 on such a strong note where he got his his surgery to remove the shrapnel in his chest, and he destroyed all of his Iron Man suits, and I mean, I guess he kind of stopped having anxiety attacks or panic attacks, but we kind of see that like all of that is still inside of him. That's all still a part of him, and that's not going anywhere. And it's only been tapped into, or I guess, quote unquote, what's it called? Enlarged, or kind of like personified, or kind of like shown to him in a way, or a feeling that was passed on to him because of the Scarlet Witch, because of Wanda Maximoff. She was able to mess with his mind and kind of get a glimpse at his feelings, his mind, and what he was able to do and what he was going to do, you know? And that's part of the reason why she allowed him to take the scepter. And he creates Ultron because he's afraid of what happened in the first Avengers movie. And just, you see these flaws a part of his character. He's not this super confident or amazing like superhero. He's just a man, you know, who has fears and doubts, and he wants to protect the things that he loves and the people that he cares about, you know. And I thought that was really, really cool. I guess my second favorite would be Ultron. I just definitely would like to see more of him. And it's a shame that they technically, you know, quote unquote, they kill Ultron in this movie simply because he's such a huge villain or antagonist against the Avengers that, I don't know, I just feel like robots, fighting like an army of robots is like possibly the best way for heroes to fight, specifically because they can like destroy them, cut them, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can blow them up, you can slice them with the sword, and it's not like you're killing a human person, you know? It's just a robot. So I feel like that's where I stand on it. But in this movie, they do a great job with it. I definitely like the action fights that they have with all of the robots and stuff. What else is there? Oh, Stan Lee cameo. Stan Lee cameo. He was at the party scene, and he was playing as a World War II veteran, and Thor is like passing around like this alcoholic beverage and drink to everybody. He gives it to Steve Rogers, and then he explains to everybody else, it's not meant for mortal men. And then Stanley's like, neither was Omaha Beach. You know what I'm saying? Give me a sip of that. And then he gets taken away all drunk and woozy, saying Excelsior. Great cameo. That was really funny. That was a good moment. Let me think. Oh, my favorite fight in the whole movie. Man, they have some great fights in this movie. I want to say the final fight on Sokovia, but it very well could be Captain America versus Ultron in Korea. I think that's my favorite fight of this movie, simply because I feel like everybody was useful during that battle, or those who were a part of it, you know what I'm saying? And I definitely like the hand-to-hand combat and the fighting of it, as opposed to, well, they fight hand-to-hand against everybody else on Sokovia. I just feel like that one wasn't as... I like fights that travel, that move. So the fight between Iron Man and the Hulk, like the Hulkbuster suit versus the Hulk, I love that fight scene because they move all throughout wherever they are. You know what I mean? They basically destroy that city. Iron Man is trying to move the Hulk, and then the Hulk pulls him in another direction, and they crash into an elevator, and they move all throughout the city. Then they go up into the sky, then they come crashing back down. And the reason why I like the Captain America versus Ultron fight is Captain America jumps on the truck, and then Ultron gets on top of the truck, and then they start fighting, and then they get tackled, and then you see Natasha throw Captain America's shield back at Steve. He catches it, they fight, then they get tackled into a bus or a train or whatever, and then they start, you know what I mean? There are a lot of moving pieces to it, and it feels like everybody was a lot more useful in creative ways. So, for example, Pietro Maximoff and Wanda Maximoff, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, we see them fight, but we see them fight in kind of like a very, I don't know, quote unquote basic way, right? We just see Wanda manipulate stuff and like destroy robots and like pull them apart or whatnot. You know what I mean? And then Pietro, we see him like punch and like run really fast and destroy a bunch of robots. But in this particular fight, or like in this particular scenario, not only do they fight or like help out Captain America or like take on Ultron, they also help stop a train, and they use their powers in the best way possible. So while Captain America is taking on Ultron, right, Natasha and Clint's job, Hawkeye and Black Widow, are supposed to get the cradle that's housing Ultron's new body that he made with Dr. Cho in Korea. And so essentially, Captain America is the fighter. He's taking on Ultron to distract him, and everybody else goes after the cradle. And it's also like an assist, so they kind of help him out. But then at the end, when they kind of get the cradle or they get what they need, it's up to Captain America, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch to stop the train. And Captain America leads them. He's like, you, Quicksilver, I need you to get the civilians out of our path that could possibly get hit by this train. And then, Wanda, can you stop this thing? And we see her stop the wheels from turning anymore. So that way it kind of like slows down and stops getting any traction, you know? I just like the strategic aspect of it a lot more than what we got in Sokovia. Because in Sokovia, it just felt like once they got lifted up into the air, it was just fight the robots without any clear direction. Just like take down the numbers, essentially. And then when it came to forming a plan or coming together, like, what can we do to stop him? We need to destroy the city, or we need to find a way to like keep him away from the core and dropping the city on the entire Earth. We have to protect we have to protect the core, and then it becomes like a one spot fight. And with the Korea fight, it was definitely, they were on top of a truck, on cars, running, jumping, fighting, punching, jump into a train goes off the rails. Captain America is like Quicksilver saving civilians in front of them, running faster than the train. Wanda's stopping the tires of it all. And then they succeed, but then Natasha gets kidnapped, right? It feels like so much happens in that, and they actually, quote unquote, accomplish their goal, but then they lose Black Widow. So my point being is that there was so much value in that particular fight. And then obviously the fight against Ultron in the end is the conclusion. And I like that one too, because everybody comes together and fights together. Like, I like the part where Vision and Iron Man and Thor, like, they do like that lightning, arc reactor, Mind Stone blast thing on Ultron. Stuff like that is really cool to me. Let me think. What else is there? They introduced the Vision in this, and I thought it was really cool that they brought Paul Bettany as Vision. Like, he's been here since the first Iron Man, playing as Jarvis, and now he's actually like manifested into this real character. And I was definitely like, I had no idea that the Vision would be a part of this movie. And I also wasn't like all that caught up with him like in like the comic books and stuff, but I was definitely interested when they birthed him, you know, when they brought him to life. I thought that was cool. I also thought what was cool was Thor backed up Tony, right? So when Captain America shows up and sees what they're doing to the cradle, doing with Ultron's new body, he's trying to get them to stop, and they have like a little fight or whatever. And so then Thor shows up all of a sudden, and he's like, Tony is right. We can't beat the Avengers alone. But with this, we can. With the vision, we can do it. And then he kind of explains the Infinity Stones and the extra cosmic power and the dream that he saw. I'm really interested. I feel like those dream sequences that happened to them at the salvage yard are really cool, and I feel like we could have gone just a little bit more in depth. My favorite dream sequence in that whole thing was definitely, I definitely like Thor's dream the most, or like the mind manipulation. But then Natasha's was also really cool because hers was so personal. And I just kind of wanted to see more of it. And then we don't actually get any more in depth until her own solo movie. And then by then, you know what I mean? Stuff happens. I won't spoil it right now, but yeah, it just feels like I wanted a little bit more of that. So anyways, to Thor's dream, or to his kind of side quest, or like what he was going for, what I liked about that sequence or about that moment is he doesn't get shown something from his past like the rest of them, right? Like Natasha got shown, she got shown what training was like for her to become a Black Widow. And then Captain America was like, this is what he could have been. This is his life. He could have gone dancing with Peggy, and he could have like enjoyed the fruits of his labor in the war and figuring out, like, you know, ending his journey as a soldier, right? Like he started off trying to defend his country, be a soldier, be of service, and then he ends the war winning, right? Like that's a victory. That's a huge W, right? That's cool to see. But then with Thor, it's not something that has come from his past. It's something that is going to happen. It's something more than memory. It's like a prophecy or some sort of fate of like, you're going to lead us all into hell, you know? I thought that was pretty cool. And it was interesting to see. Although I wish he had kind of, I don't know. I do wish that they had gone a little bit more in depth with it, or like figured out, like, if they knew what they were going to do with Thor from that moment on, I feel like it would have been, they would have given us a lot more. But because in that particular Avengers movie, they probably didn't know the direction that they were headed, or like, or maybe they did. I don't know. But you get my point. They probably didn't know the exact direction or what exactly they were going to do next for another Thor movie. So they kept it ambiguous, right? Or they kept it to like the larger plot, which is the Infinity Stones are coming into the story, and this is the direction we're going. Let's make it about that. Let's not make it about, you know, what'll eventually be Thor Ragnarok and the destruction of Asgard, even though they do touch on that, but it's not exactly crystal clear. They don't give us a direct, like they don't show Hela, or they don't show other bits and pieces about it. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of up in the air at the moment, right? But anyways, do I think a piece of Ultron is right? And there's some validity to what he says. You can kind of understand his feelings about humanity, especially because he's not a part of it. But at the same time, I think one of the important things about this is like man versus machine, and like what does that mean for us? And I think this movie would like us to believe, or most movies or most things that we see would like us to believe, that the human will, the human spirit, our nature overpowers AI or artificial intelligence, because we're human beings, and you know, robots can't replicate what we are, or what we feel, or how we express ourselves. You know what I'm saying? And they can only mimic us. So Ultron is made up of Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. He's not you know, uh, he is his own robot, sort of, but it's more so like, I don't know what peace would look, or like, I don't know what regular life would be for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, once he creates peace, what comes next? You know, he doesn't have anything after that. He doesn't really have a solid 100% plan. And it feels more so like he has the answer, but he doesn't. What he can't, you know, he has the like the mind, or the he has the mental capacity to be like, if we do this, then everything will be a lot better, you know? But having to sacrifice so much is such a it's such an emotional toll on humanity that he's just like sees it as a numbers game rather than a spiritual, you know, spiritual feeling, a place where it's like these people don't have to die, or they don't have to conform to your idea just because you see it as a better way, you know? It just kind of has to be flawed, and we have to make mistakes of our own choices, because then we'll be able to, I don't know, quote unquote, be human, you know? And he doesn't understand that. How could he? He's not. But that's why I like that end between Vision and Ultron, where he's like, you know, they're going to ruin themselves. And then Vision's just kind of like, the beautiful thing about it is that it doesn't last forever, you know? So they're dooming themselves, yes, but that's the beauty of it. They're humans, and they're not going to live to see the next day or what happens next, you know? So let them live and make their own mistakes and see what happens next. And I don't know, I like that conversation. I really like Vision in that moment, and that was one of the moments that makes you feel like, man, Vision is so special, because he is able to fully feel or understand or like respect life in a way that Ultron doesn't, you know? And that feels good. Let me think, what else is there? Before I forget, end credit scene, or like mid credit scene. Mid credit scene is Thanos grabbing the Infinity Gauntlet and saying, "Fine, I'll do it myself." That was really cool. That was nice. A nice little Easter egg from the first Avengers movie, and him having like now the Infinity Gauntlet he needs to basically destroy to prepare for battle for his next step. I don't know. What else is there? The long-term effects of this movie definitely hold so much weight, so much power in the upcoming movies, in a way that, just like the first Avengers movie affects this one will affect the next one, and then the next one, right? Like, there's so much setup in this movie, and that's why it kind of doesn't feel like the best Avengers movie. It doesn't feel as, I don't know, quote unquote, happy, or like a satisfying conclusion, because they did so much, you know? But it's the next step. It's what happens next, or what they did to save people and to help people. I really liked this Avengers movie. It's definitely rewatchable for me. Certain moments, certain scenes. And I'll say the saddest part about this movie is obviously Pietro's death when he saves Hawkeye. I thought it was so stupid. That mom was like holding her son throughout the whole movie, and then she's suddenly on one of those like boats, like for Shield, for the what's it called, helicarrier, and then all of a sudden she's separated from her son. I was like, what kind of, I thought that was such BS. I was like, this is so stupid. She's been holding on to her son the whole movie, and you're telling me now, off screen, she lost her son and is on the boat, and he's like stuck on the ground and he can't stand up. I was like, what is going on? And so Hawkeye goes to save him. Pietro saves Hawkeye, and then he dies. And well, not cool. It's sad that he's dead. But there's this moment where Pietro saves Hawkeye and goes, you didn't see that coming. And that was such a beautiful moment. But then also Captain America runs over to them and he sees Quicksilver, he sees Pietro dead. And then Hawkeye looks up at him and they have like this unspoken like look of like, darn it, we lost. We lost somebody. We lost a good one. And then we see Wanda crying and going crazy, you know what I mean? She was going stupid, you know what I mean? She lost her brother, and that was such a heavy toll on her. And then Hulk leaves, right? He doesn't turn back into Banner. He leaves on the Quinjet and kind of goes to live his own life, figure out who he is and whatnot. It's kind of weird because he's usually such a softie for Natasha, but instead he chooses to run away on his own, not together like they had kind of planned. And that's the example of like, she turned him into the Hulk, and then he just basically runs away from her. He chooses something else. That was kind of odd, but in a nice way. In a way that, I don't know, maybe that I wasn't really expecting. But long story short, when you're watching Avengers Age of Ultron, get ready for some robot action. Get ready for some cool moments. Like, I like the moment when Thor and Cap use the shield and the hammer together. Like when they hit it against each other and they like, the shockwave destroys a tank. Or like when Cap kicks it up and then Thor hits it and then it bounces off all of the robots and stuff. That was so cool. I love Captain America's suit in this. I like Iron Man's suit at the end of it. I like Vision's design. Everybody else is okay, I guess. I think this is probably my favorite Captain America suit, if I'm being completely honest. I like the white on the arms. Like, he doesn't have that on like his other suits, which is cool. I don't think it's necessary, but I definitely like you could tell the upgrades that Tony added to the suit, right? It's a lot more technologically advanced with like the magnetic sensor for the vibranium shield. Like, all Cap has to do is like flex his fingers and the vibranium shield will come to him. I thought that was a cool touch. Yeah, I like stuff like that. Yeah, so possibly my favorite suit, if I'm being real. But what else is there? Is there anything else? I would say I honestly, I want them to bring Ultron back. I think it would be really cool. And I kind of have an idea of how they could do it, but maybe that's for a later podcast episode. Let me think. What I like about this movie compared to all the other Avengers movies is this is something that they create. This is something that Tony Stark makes. This is a villain or an antagonist who is made because of his flaws and his feelings, He pushes this basically against themselves. And I like that. I like that he creates the villain of this movie, as opposed to the first Avengers movie where it's Loki, and then the third and the fourth Avengers movie, which is like, another, it's Thanos, you know what I mean? Spoilers for the future Avengers movies, but it's Thanos. He's the villain of the other ones. But this one, he creates the villain. And I thought that was really cool. And I still think it's cool. So, I don't know. When you're watching Avengers Age of Ultron, definitely have an eye out for that Korean fight scene. I think that's like the best one in the movie. But then, obviously, the final fight, and then the Hulk Buster versus the Hulk is also really great. Stuff like that just really is really just fan service, you know? Who would win in a fight, Iron Man or Hulk? And then what if Captain America fought Ultron, you know? Man versus machine, you know? I think that was really cool. And then when Vision picks up Mjolnir, you know what I mean? And he hits Ultron, and like Thor and Vision talk about the balance of it. And when they're trying to lift up Thor's hammer and Cap half picks it up, and he kind of like, you know, you hear that squeak of the handle and you see Thor's face like drop a little bit. That was so cool. I love that scene. I love when they try to pick up the hammer and Captain could have picked it up. He could have, because the Russo said that he was just being like a nice guy. But I have another theory, or a theory that I saw. And the theory is that he was like, he was worthy, but he was only half worthy. Does that make sense? Like he could only pick up the handle, but he couldn't pick it up all the way because he was holding back the information that he was keeping from Tony about Bucky and the Winter Soldier, which we'll get into another movie. But that was what was holding him back from fully picking it up. And then by the time, you know, in the later movies, you know, spoilers, but when he does something awesome and incredible, it's kind of like, oh, now that it's all out in the open, he's like the best version of himself. He's able to like fully pick it up and do stuff. Spoilers. But anyways, yeah, I had great time with this. The slower scenes, you know, the romance between Natasha and Bruce Banner, not my favorite. I just feel like that was probably the weakest part of the film, or it just didn't work for me. The part where it's like she's describing how she basically got like, you know, she got like surgery done so that way she can't have children, and then she looks at Bruce Banner, is like, you think you're the only monster on the team? It's like, they did that to you. Like, that wasn't your choice. Like, that doesn't make you a monster. That doesn't make you a bad person. Like, killing people, you know, obviously she's a murderer, right? She's an assassin, but those were, again, that wasn't her choice. That, like, those were skills that they forced her to learn or to be. And, you know, Bruce also chose to take that gamma radiation so that he could like try to see if he could become like the next super soldier or whatever. And then it went awful, and now he has to like deal with the consequences. But like, that doesn't make them equal in any way. I don't know. But anyways, Age of Ultron, good movie. I'm not gonna say great, good. It's definitely good. And I think it's so different from the first one that I'm kind of like, I'm glad they went in that direction, which was so unique and interesting. But overall, good movie. Go watch it if you're into some fighting robots, kicking robot butt. There's one more thing. There's a great moment. They keep on replaying it like on TV, or like when they were like showing trailers for this movie. Is like Cap is like, he does like this roll or like front flip dodge or whatever, and then he like snaps the robot's neck with the vibranium shield on the ground. I thought that was cool. But anyways, Avengers Age of Ultron, good movie. Definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it in a while. It's probably like, you're going to find something about the movie that you like, you know? Whether it's the salvage yard scene, or Ultron being born, or the final fight, or the Korean fight scene, or the starting fight scene, or the Avengers talking about like Ultron, or how to stop Ultron, or something, you know? There's always something to enjoy about these movies. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.